Now I never meant to do you wrong. That's what I came here to say.
Okay, back to two unemployed people. I got a text, by the way. Did you listen to me and Rebecca?
I did not. I did
Okay.
not. But I could feel the emotion just coming through the promotion of that podcast. I did read a lot of what you both wrote.
Yeah.
So I felt like I had a pretty good sense of what your week was like.
Yeah. Rebecca started the podcast by saying credit to the Bandwagon Beach podcast for their diversity, equality, and inclusion initiatives, and including an employed woman on the podcast
Yes,
instead of an
that's
unemployed
true.
man.
Yeah. This is a podcast for unemployed white men.
Yes. So back to the unemployed white men. Darren, I'm going to warn you. It's a good thing we're in semi-public right now because I am fucking unhinged.
Yeah.
And I mean that literally in the last 48 hours, I have started questioning my reality. I asked my wife this morning the likelihood that I went into a coma about 10 to 12 years ago, and all of this is just in my brain because otherwise it doesn't, it's too much. It seems like it's too much to be real. So I'm losing my grip on reality. I vacillate back and forth between depression and white hot rage. And now we're going to talk about all of it, probably, or a lot of it.
Wow, this is an amazing reaction to Luka Doncic being traded, John. That's an amazing reaction that you're this unhinged still.
It's part of it.
About that.
It's part of it. And I literally this morning put together this whole theory for my wife. I was like, the problem is I cannot escape what is going on in our government because the same thing is happening with my basketball team. And the basketball team used to be my escape. And instead, Mark Cuban sold the Mavericks. And Miriam Adelson is now the Dallas Mavericks version of Donald Trump, which is interesting since she's his biggest supporter financially, and someone who said 3 days before the election that she was voting for him and supporting him because she wanted to build a resort on the beaches of Gaza, which is now apparently going to happen. And Nico Harrison has basically been given full reign by her to do whatever the fuck he wants with the Dallas Mavericks, including trading the best player probably in franchise history. The most talented player in franchise history he traded and got almost no value for, did not shop him around, did all that stuff. I will tell you, you play a role in this. You play a role in many things in my life. Maybe next week we'll dig into this.
Wow. Okay. I'm not even sure that I was aware of that.
My wife, as she stated on the last episode of this podcast, has now declared herself a fan of the New York Knicks.
This is so surreal. Sorry to interrupt. And I know we're talking about other things other than just what happened with the basketball trade. Can I tell you, though, somebody holding up the Knicks as an example of where disgruntled fans, confused fans of other teams are turning to?
At least you know what to expect.
It's very bizarre, dude. It is very bizarre.
This is what I'm
because
talking
we
about.
have been that team
I'm starting
for about 20 years.
to doubt my own reality, Darren, and that's part of it. But I will tell you, there is a moment, because we watched their win against the Raptors last night. We watched their win the night before against the Houston Rockets. Apparently now, even when the Knicks and Mavericks are playing at the same time, the Knicks are on in my house, not the Mavericks. And at least once per game, the same exact thought goes through my mind during a commercial break. Holy shit, I forgot Rick Pitino's the coach of the Johnnies.
Yep.
What the hell? Was that this year? Is this year?
This is year number 2.
They're 20-3?
20-3.
They're ridiculous.
They are in first place in the Big East. It is unusual. They just beat Marquette. The Garden's back. I know if you're listening in San Diego, you probably don't give a shit about Madison Square Garden, but the Garden's back, baby. Knicks are getting 19,000 people to go. I'm sorry. St. John's is getting 18,000, 19,000 people to go to basketball games.
That's
again.
fucking insane.
Yeah.
Also insane is that 900-year-old Dracula is still an effective college basketball coach in 2025.
Still got it,
What
baby.
is that, man? Yep. That's insane.
I said when they hired him, I said, all right, so the good news is Final Four within about 3-4 years, probation within 7.
And then he's gone.
Totally worth it.
Where was he at before this? Somewhere even less prestigious.
He was
right?
at a smaller school in New Rochelle, New York, which is the suburbs, called Iona College.
Oh, he was at Iona.
Iona College. for what it's worth, which is nothing. I did go to Iona Grammar School and Iona Preparatory.
Yeah.
Until I got tossed out of my ear for having thought that was not in line with this.
You got
institution.
tossed out of a school?
I did.
How old were you?
It was after my sophomore year of high school.
I almost got tossed out of my high school around that time too, so I can't.
I finished in public school, which was fine. Probably more a public school person anyhow.
I went to private high school and barely made it. Everything else was public.
Did not do well with dress code. Did not do well with
Same.
hair regulations, things
Same.
like that. All bunch of bullshit. So yeah, and maybe I'm overstating a little bit. I wasn't exactly tossed out. It was we strongly suggested you don't come back. But anyway, he was at Iona College, and then he did what I've wanted to happen for no joke for 30 years of my life. That Rick Pitino ended up becoming the head coach at St. John's University.
Wait, you wanted that for 30 years?
Oh yeah.
Back when the 30 years ago would have been Kentucky?
Kentucky, out of Providence. I'm just speaking. He was at Providence first, went to the Final Four there, right, with Billy Donovan.
Yeah.
He was the Knicks head coach for a while. I just always thought.
Wait, he was the Knicks head coach?
Yeah.
No, he was the Celtics head coach.
He was the Knicks coach first.
And the Nets head coach? Was he also the Knicks?
He was the Knicks head coach, yep.
God, what team in the Northeast has he not coached?
Well, that's why I'm saying eventually this has got to result in him going to St. John's. So, again, it does not feel, it feels kind of crazy that this is the alma mater. Now, keep this in mind, just so I'll get this out of my system.
Yeah.
John.
Everyone's tuning in for our St. John's thoughts.
John, I have not seen my alma mater win an NCAA tournament basketball game since I was in my 20s. That is the last time.
So
now,
30 years.
Somebody will say, well, hey, whatever.
28
but
years.
But you need to understand real quick,
Yeah.
St. John's was one of the top 4 or 5 programs in the country
For a while.
when I went to school there.
Yeah.
We were 3rd or 4th all-time wins behind Blue Bloods, Kansas, North Carolina, Kentucky.
Didn't Pitino replace Chris Mullen? Did Chris Mullen go there at that time? Or am I mixing up schools?
You mean as a coach?
Yeah, he replaced Chris Mullen.
Yeah,
which
so,
is how
so
I
there was
found
Steve Lavin, who's now the head coach at USD. Lavin got replaced by
Former
Chris
UCLA
Mullen.
coach. Yeah.
Because they wanted at some point to get Chris Mullen through the door.
That's how I found out Chris Mullen went there, right?
Yeah.
And he's an NBA Hall of Famer. He's a basketball
NBA
Hall of Famer.
Yeah, that was my first. That was the first team, one of the first teams that I ever truly loved in my life.
Like Chris Mullen's
The
Johnnies.
the 84 St. John's team, which was ranked number 1 in the country, which went to a Final Four.
Yeah.
Right. So again, this is a long-winded way of saying this is a program that's had a ton of history, and it's completely fallen off the face of the earth to the point where when Pitino got hired, I said, well, listen, if he can't bring it back, then let's just shut the program down. Honestly, I don't see any purpose in it if Pitino can't get it done there. And here we are, season number 2. Should have made the tournament last year. And I know that sounds incredibly like a homer thing. That's a homer take. But, it's going to be a crazy month, February. Got to play UConn twice.
Yeah.
But, got through Marquette, so things are looking good.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to your
Back to me.
terminally online unhinged situation.
I'm losing it, man. I'm losing it, and everything's going bad. And the Mavericks had just self-immolated on behalf of Nico Harrison, and the government is doing the same thing. And I need more people to be freaking out about that. Like I said to my wife the other day, I was like, "How are people just getting up and going to their jobs? Like the government is being stolen, and people are just getting up and going to their jobs." And then I heard this interview with this lady where she was saying she talked to this woman who lived through Nazi Germany. She asked this woman, like, how did everyone just get up and go along with it? And or it was phrased as like, some people went along with it. Like, how is history going to judge them or something? And she was like, some people, everyone went along with it, because it gets to the point where you have 2 choices. You can lose your job and potentially go to jail, or you can go along with it. And I feel like that's where we are right now. Like already is like, you can go along with it and you can keep your job and you can stay out of jail, or you can fight. And everyone is afraid of losing their jobs and losing where they live and maybe losing their freedom. And so everyone's kind of going along with it. But I just feel like I am constantly losing my mind. My anxiety is as high as it's been in fucking years. And, we're starting a podcast where everyone wants to hear our thoughts on the San Diego Padres and the SDFC. And we're talking about, I don't know, the Johnnies, Luka Doncic, and the government. Should we?
Well,
should we,
I have
should we reel this
you
back
want me
in?
to try to make you feel better?
Yeah.
Here's a headline from Front Office Sports. From first take to first term, Stephen A. Smith's presidential prospects. Could ESPN Stephen A. Smith run for president? The Smith for President bandwagon not just the fever dream of the commentator, host, and executive producer of ESPN's First Take, or his bosses at the Walt Disney Company. Smith just emerged as a presidential contender in a survey of potential Democratic candidates by Donald Trump's former pollster, John McLaughlin. Sportscasters shared, get this, 2% of the vote in a hypothetical 2028 Democratic presidential primary that was right behind the 3% for vice presidential candidate and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Do you feel better?
No.
What?
No, I don't.
You don't want Stephen A. yelling at you every day from the Oval Office?
Here's the thing. A, that assumes there's going to be an election. B, that assumes that we're not a Nazi government run by an unelected billionaire at that point, because there's no way Elon Musk is allowing Stephen A. Smith to be president. And C, this proves that all people know about politics is how famous someone is.
Yes.
And nothing else fucking matters. Mm-hmm. And that shit is driving me crazy. But let's pause. Pause on all of this. Let's reel it back in. Where are we?
We are in Logan Heights, Barrio Logan.
Barrio Logan.
Either is acceptable. We are at Border X Brewing.
Yeah, which is not open to the public, just open to us.
It is not open to the public.
Yep.
We are sitting out back because we've been given a sneak peek of what is coming at some point next week. Maybe by the time you listen to this podcast, this place will be back up and running and open to the public.
Yep.
We just met with some of the higher-ups and new ownership, and we are here podcasting on the back deck in one of San Diego's truly, truly great neighborhoods.
I love this neighborhood, man. You can't look anywhere without seeing Mexican and just Hispanic culture and art. Like I'm looking over there, and there's probably a name for those things. You know,
Papel Picado.
Is that what they're called? Mm-hmm. They're there. There's the painting of the butterflies on the wall. If you look in between, you see the painting on the building over there. There's paintings on the brew house over there. Inside, there's paintings on the wall. Everything just feels. I used to say this when I lived in LA and I came down to San Diego. I was like, there's just not enough art everywhere. And same thing when I lived in Philly. Like, there's murals everywhere. There's art everywhere. And San Diego always seemed to lack that to some degree for me, comparatively. Barrio Logan is a place where that is not lacking. It's wonderful. I love it down here. I really like this brewery. I look forward to them reopening, and maybe future episodes of the Unemployed Guys podcast, in addition to this one, will be recorded here. We'll see. Who knows? But we should probably quote unquote, start 12, 13 minutes in on Padres.
Well,
you don't want to talk about the Super Bowl, do you?
I do think it's important for you to say the things that you're not alone. It's not like you're coming from this, what did you say, unhinged?
Unhinged.
Is that your word? You're not alone. So like, I think you probably will appeal to a lot of people in describing, how you're currently feeling, not just as a Dallas Mavericks fan, or as somebody who's looking ahead to 2028 and the idea that Stephen A. Smith may run for president because that's the country we live in, but I don't feel like you're alone in expressing your anxieties on a podcast. I honestly hope this is helpful for you.
We'll see when we get to the end of it. All right, let's start there. We'll work our way back to the Padres because I have thoughts on FanFest and John Seidler and all of it. Michael King. This is what I wrote under the section that just says Trump/Musk in my notes. I wrote, there are no rules. There is no order. The Constitution is now meaningless. This is an oligarchy. Elon is a Nazi. I don't think that is up for debate anymore. And then I started thinking about COVID, right? Lockdown, pandemic. Because if you're trying to figure out how we got here, the easiest and clearest answer, and I don't think it's the best answer, but the easiest and clearest answer is that this is a direct retaliation for COVID lockdown. And the funny thing is, like, I was talking about it with Rebecca. I'm sure you've talked about it with your wife. And she was like, in some ways, this feels like COVID again, in that everyone is depressed. We don't know what to do. And it's unprecedented. What we're going through is unprecedented. No one knows how to deal with it because there's nothing to point at and be like, oh, last time we did this. And I started really thinking about lockdown, and I remembered things that I had forgotten about it. There was a point in time where Rebecca and I went to the beach. And you weren't allowed, you could walk on the beach. You were not allowed to sit down on the beach, lay down on the beach, stop in any way. You were not allowed to go within 15 feet of another person unless they were part of your like family or pack or something like this. So I remember we were walking along Coronado Beach and we like stopped at, there's like a jetty or something. We stopped and sat on a rock and someone showed up on like an ATV like 30 seconds later. Like, keep it moving. You can't stop. And then I started thinking about, there was times where like you literally couldn't leave your house unless you were, what did they call them? It wasn't emergency responders or first responders. Essential worker. You had to be an essential worker. You had to prove you were an essential worker to essentially leave your house. Rebecca was saying one of her COVID memories is going to Trader Joe's and they were letting in a certain number of people at a time. And you had to go through the store you had to follow these arrows through the store and follow a line through the entire store, even if you knew what you were buying. You had to go
6 feet apart, right? Yeah.
6 feet apart. You had to go through it a line, avoid everyone. And I was like, I think I get why their brains broke, why they freaked out, because in a way that does sound like prison, right? You can't leave your house. You're not allowed to stop and sit on the beach. You're not allowed to go through the store the way you want to. You have to stay in a line 6 feet apart. There's people watching you. There's people yelling at you. It feels like you're being policed at all times. And I was like, I get a little bit why people's brains broke. Mm-hmm. I'm sad that their brains broke.
Felt like images of, the USSR, people waiting in line for bread, right?
Yeah.
Standing outside and single file formation.
Yeah. But the whole thing is just like, it's enraging. It's sad. And it doesn't feel like there's a possibility for a good ending here.
Well, I'm not going to pretend like I'm a constitutional expert when it comes to some of this sort of stuff, right? Like none of it feels good. Like a lot of this stuff feels pretty bad. But as I'm listening, I'm thinking to myself, I wonder if you're going to, maybe the biggest story of the last week was this plane crash.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I was just on an airplane out of Sacramento yesterday. We're recording on Wednesday, so I was just on a flight out of Sacramento, which was an uncomfortable flight due to weather circumstances. And obviously we made it back to San Diego and all is good. But it was 40 mile per hour winds. It was a deluge. It was not a comfortable experience at all. But in the back of my mind, right, I still have this horrifying image of what went on the Potomac River with this Black Hawk helicopter crashing into this airplane, and even more than that, what was that? Was that like a week ago?
That was last Wednesday.
That was okay. That was a week ago.
I know, because I was with someone who works for the government who got a text message and was like, "So a Black Hawk helicopter just crashed into a plane on the Potomac," and I'm like, fuck are you talking about? And he's like, I swear to God. And I'm like, I'm pulling up Blue Sky. I'm trying to pull up CNN on my phone. I'm like, this is nowhere. And he's like, just trust me. And like 5 minutes later, I was like, holy shit.
So of all the things that are providing you this level of anxiety, right?
Yeah.
All the things that you just rattled off. For me, thinking about that and thinking about the immediate reaction to that from the White House.
Yeah.
Still, as much as...
Doesn't make you feel safe?
No. And that you had the family of this helicopter pilot reluctant to provide their daughter's name.
Yeah.
For fear of what reaction could be like from fucking chuds on social media.
Because that's where we are.
Is the fact that, had this air... Now, again, I'm not trying to create a problem where one didn't exist because my flight made it, right? Yeah. And, statistically, it's still the safest way to travel.
Yeah.
But... that if something had happened, the response could have been, DEI, blah.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
Right, something along those lines.
Oh, yeah, because the pilot was a woman.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, was she flying the helicopter? I don't know that detail has come out. But that was the initial reaction, right? Not just from the fucking president of the United States.
Yeah.
But then he makes a vice president get up there and say the same thing. And then he makes... somebody else get up there and say the same exact thing. Like, I don't know, all the constitutional courtroom, who has access here, there, right? Like, none of it sounds great. So I understand. But man, I still am struggling with that moment of trying to explain how, standards were lower and diverse, like how that happened so quickly while there was still, this airplane and this helicopter sitting at the bottom of the Potomac River. And we still got to the point then where fingers were being pointed at a time where people were nervous.
Yeah.
And people probably, again, and maybe that's a two-way street, but still, you just like don't need that. I'm like, God, what a terrible tone setter that has been for all of it.
It's because he's unwilling to take blame. But
you don't have to take blame there.
No,
what you got to say is like, oh man, our hearts are broken for these people.
Yes, but he knew that there was a potential for a story to be like, well, he fired a bunch of air traffic controllers and there was only one when there should have been two, and the level of safety in flying right now is not as high as it used to be because of the thing. I saw a thing from someone who works in the industry who was like, yeah, all these air traffic controllers were offered that like you can resign and get the 8 months. And they were like, there's talk in the industry of everyone taking it on the same day at the same time and walking off and just shutting down air travel in America for a little while. And your wife flies a ton.
A ton.
My wife flies a ton. This is something that has made us nervous because we feel like the safety nets that the government usually provides to us are no longer there, right? And like there's the Guantanamo Bay, they're building a prison for 30,000 people, which might be immigrants that they want to deport, might be U.S. citizens that have committed crimes, might be homeless, might be people that are dissenters that just say bad things about Trump in public. Now El Salvador has signed on. I saw like 2 hours ago, Guatemala, same thing. Send them to us. You want to deport people? Send them to us and we'll send you a bill. Right? And all these countries are like, we can rip Trump off. We can make a bunch of money off Trump. And meanwhile, Trump's just thinking anyone who doesn't like me just gets shipped out. This is the Red Scare, but worse. Like McCarthy just called people communists and let the public do the rest. Trump did that for a while. And now he's like, no. If I don't like you, you're getting sent to some South American country. Good luck ever seeing your family or talking to them again. And that shit is fucking terrifying. And here's where I'll call you out. I started my process. I met with a lawyer. They are digging into my family history to see if I am eligible for Italian citizenship.
Citizenship by descent.
Citizenship by descent. If I do get it, if my family gets it, I have cousins that have signed on as well. Like we'll do this too. Apparently, we can get a group discount because we're all pointing to the same descendant, which is my great grandfather Giuseppe Gennaro.
Giuseppe Gennaro.
Giuseppe Gennaro. Oh, my computer just went. Oh, there it goes. Giuseppe Gennaro is going to save all of us and get us all out of here. But it's like, here's the thing. I've always loved being an American. I've always loved the fact that I could go to almost any country in the world, any place on earth, and say to someone, I am an American, and their response to that is almost entirely positive. Like, they might think we're stupid, especially now that Trump is our president, but they're always like, yeah, Americans, they do good stuff. They helped us at this point, or they helped really poor people, or they helped sick children, or whatever. And now all that's being ripped out because USAID, no, this is a ripoff, this is fraud, this is whatever, and they're shutting it all down. And it's like everything that I have loved about this country, outside of like the people that I know and the places that I've been, everything else, all the freedoms that I have grown up with and taken advantage of and appreciated, but also, like cherished at times, are just disappearing day by day. The Department of Education is about to go flying out the window. What does that mean for just kids, schools? Doesn't matter. They're going to rip out the whole government and privatize everything and let their buddies get the contracts. And that's how we become the USSR. That's how we become an oligarchy. And it's all happening, and it's driving me crazy. And if I could have, to circle back around, if I could have 2 hours a day where I didn't have to think about this shit,
right,
and I could just watch the Dallas Mavericks in fucking peace, I think I'd be able to deal with this. But instead, I turn on the Dallas fucking Mavericks, and here's a guy ripping out all the parts of the Dallas Mavericks that he doesn't like because it's his fiefdom, and he needs everyone to know that. And when people are like, actually, no, the superstar's in charge, fine, I'll fucking trade him because I can. And in Donald Trump's case, he's like, I can't, but I'm going to do it anyway. Who's going to stop me? The Supreme Court and what army? Like, there's not a lot of good going on right now, Darren, and I'm having a hard time finding bits of joy.
So are you objecting to me taking just a brief moment to not doom scroll so that I can enjoy the two basketball teams that I care about?
No, I wish I could.
Okay.
I wish I could.
I wish
it was.
without that, then this is probably a pretty bleak podcast, even more bleak than it currently is.
Here we can circle all the way back to the San Diego Padres.
Because I don't need to feel guilty about enjoying something that I haven't seen in 25 years.
No, you don't. I said to my wife yesterday or this morning, I was like, I really fucking need spring training games to start.
Yeah.
I need something I can watch on my TV and escape to. I've been trying to watch movies.
SDFC, man. Get up to Carson, California and play the MLS Cup holders. Get up there in a couple of weeks.
We're going to talk about SDFC.
Okay.
But I have just been dying for some sort of escape, and I've been watching movies. I was watching Conclave on Saturday night. You know Conclave?
No.
So just came out on streaming, I think. We had to rent it. It was in theaters before that. It's Ray Fiennes is the person in charge of selecting a new pope after the old pope dies. And there's all sorts of drama as guys are fighting. I want to be pope. I want to be pope. That guy shouldn't be pope. Here's a bit of gossip as to why that guy shouldn't be. It's very dramatic and actually a lot funnier than I thought it was going to be. Okay. And I'm halfway through Conclave on Saturday night, and I get a text message from Craig Elston that just says, "What happened?" And I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he, in all caps, this is all caps, he just writes back again, "What the fuck happened?" And I was like, did something blow up? And I open up Blue Sky, because that's the only social media I do now, and Luke is traded to the Lakers. And I stopped the movie and said to Rebecca, she was like, "Why are you stopping the movie?" I was like, "The Mavericks traded Luka." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "The Mavericks traded Luka." She's like, "That didn't happen. There's no fucking way. That would never happen." And then the rest of our night was us just sitting there going, how? Why? And we haven't really stopped since then. But I needed escape, and I don't have any escapes right now except, like, you know, I can go for like a 45-minute run or an hour and a half long bike ride, and those are nice. But you know what I do? I listen to podcasts. You know what podcasts I usually listen to? Politics and the Dallas Mavericks and NBA. And all the NBA podcasts all want to talk about what a fucking joke Nico Harrison is. So I have no escape right now. Mm-hmm. My wife is finding some solace in the New York Knicks as that replacement escape.
Should we loop her in on the group text?
You should absolutely loop her in on the group text. We have
the Merry Knicksmas group text.
That's a funny name.
Yes.
I was telling her about when I asked to check in on the group chat when you guys were all going to go to Vegas for the NBA Cup game, and then they lost that game to the Bucks or whatever, and they ended up not going. I was like, yeah, apparently the group chat can get real sad sometimes. But yeah, loop her in on the group chat.
I love that. I mean, listen,
I need spring training to come. I need it. I need games on my TV just so I can zone out and get away.
I think, you know.
Otherwise, I'm going to end up an alcoholic.
And you use that word need. Like, I do think that there's, you know, again, and I certainly don't want to come across as somebody who's sitting here and downplaying the significance of everything that we're witnessing. I also think, you know, sometimes it's easy to get a bit ahead of ourselves with some of the conclusions that we're drawing.
I absolutely do that every day of my life.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm not even sure that they believe that their own bullshit sometimes. But, you know, I do think, you know, it's a really, really important thing to you know, whatever it is, exercise, like you said, play some hoops, get offline. You know, I have a bad habit sometimes of getting up and getting consumed by some of the stuff, because I think I said this a couple of weeks back. We're back into that frame of mind, like, you know, it's 7:00 on the West Coast. Like, what's already happened? you know, like, how much have we already missed?
Yeah.
By the time you even, you know, want to pick up your telephone and find out what's going on. But yeah, I mean, it's you know, none of it feels great at all. I don't know. To me, I mean, I certainly, I've had some exposure to many people who think it's all great, you know, and you know that spending should be brought into check, and you know you've seen the same sort of stuff.
I keep waiting for my neighbor's Trump flag to come down. It hasn't come down yet.
Yeah, but you know, again, I just go back to that like, of all the things that we've seen, because you know, I certainly don't pretend to be an expert, and I'm not trying to evade it.
No, yeah.
Like, literally, like, I'm not a constitutional law expert. So,
right.
But like,
I have friends that are,
just like the blaming, like the immediate blaming, to me is just, you know, that it has set a tone for this administration, which you knew already existed, but seemingly somehow even reached yet another new low.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Almost every day there's a new
That's
low.
a fucking military pilot.
Dude, his body's being pulled out of the Potomac when he said it.
And you just, you can't help but feel for the family, that the theory was making the rounds. That, they were choosing not to have her name out there publicly because they just, what are you doing?
We're not, but they don't value people anymore, right? Like I saw a thing this morning.
No, you're just an avatar. It's just a woman. It's just a minority. It's a diversity hire.
I saw this morning, Elon Musk, someone tweeted something about how Medicare and Medicaid was the biggest cause of fraud in this country, and it needed to be completely defunded and torn down and destroyed. And Elon Musk retweeted that with, yes, exactly. And I was like, do you know how many people are on these programs? Like, they're going to rip out Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, like the VA.
I've got a dad who's a vet who's in a assisted living facility in Florida where I'm heading next week to go see him for his 83rd birthday, who relies a lot on everything that you're describing here, and
everyone
is
knows
pretty
someone who
much
does.
just getting by. We have another mutual friend and colleague who has a special needs child who just got into an assisted program, and the uncertainty of where that's all going with the Board of Education, Department of Education is, something that is creating an insane amount of stress. So, it doesn't just feel like it's far away or through the reaches of social media. I think we all understand, or at least have somebody who is not even 6 degrees separation, like who we all know who's dealing with some of these decisions. So, and we'll see.
My wife is on the board of the new Children's Museum in downtown San Diego. They get a fair amount of funding from the federal government because children's museums are good fucking things for communities, for kids, for parents. And they're like, we're not sure how we're going to deal without that. My wife took a tour yesterday down in San Ysidro of this nonprofit that takes unused buildings, whatever they are, barns, old auto shops that shut down, and they turn them into things like classrooms or places for domestic violence. People that have faced domestic violence, they need a place to live for a few days. They do all of this, and she talked to them, and she was like, "How is the Trump administration going to affect your funding?" And they were like, if what he is saying actually happens, if this funding freeze actually happens, we're dead in the water. We can't do anything. These are things that help people, and almost everyone listening to this podcast, if not everyone who's listening to this podcast, knows someone who will be negatively affected by this. And I just don't know why everyone's not in the fucking streets screaming and yelling.
And given where we are geographically now, we're 2 blocks away from Chicano Park.
Yeah.
We're maybe a mile as the crow flies from where there was a pretty significant protest over the weekend in National City. So, again, this is impactful in ways that certainly where it is that I live, this is my general corner of San Diego County, literally. These are places that you will certainly see reaction to a lot of the things that we've already discussed, and you have, and you will continue to see more. And it just feels like that's where this is now. Yeah.
Quick aside before we get into sports talk. If you are listening to this podcast and you're like, wow, I'm really tired of hearing about Darren and John talk about their political opinions and their lives and the people in their lives who are affected by things that this administration is doing, this is a free fucking podcast. Turn it off and go listen to something else if it's bothering you. Now, on to the sports.
And now with sports, John Gennaro.
I had 2 different people, 2 different regular listeners of this podcast, which apparently this is now a podcast and not just you as a weekly guest because we got nothing to do, reach out to me and say, I need an STFC primer. I need someone to explain to me everything I need to know going into the season. The season for STFC, the MLS season starts in 2 weeks-ish.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to put you on the spot and be like, do a primer now. I told those people that next week I would attempt to have you explain to me all the things that I need to know about STFC heading into the season. And hopefully that will work for our audience as well. So if you're looking for that, hopefully we will remember to do that next week.
So their season starts February 22nd. It's I think, right? Do I have that right? 22nd or...
That sounds right.
Yeah, and they'll be up the road.
That's 17 days.
Against the Galaxy. Galaxy are the reigning MLS Cup holders.
What is the
MLS
name
Cup
of that
champs.
stadium now?
Oh, I don't know. It's a good
Galaxy
question.
Sports Health Complex something?
Is it different than when the Chargers were there? Is it no longer Dignity Health?
I think that's it, yeah.
Okay.
I still remember it as StubHub forever.
And then SDFC will, and at least as of this morning, I saw that tickets were still available. Not that I'm trying to push tickets, but that tickets were still available for their inaugural home match on March 1st. Now, they played a couple of preseason games behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. Don't know exactly why that was the decision, to play behind closed doors, but maybe that's just the way the coach wants it, and that's the way the sporting director wants it.
I had a question about that, because that's stuck in my head after we talked about it last week when you said that they had played Phoenix Rising, you thought?
Phoenix Rising, yeah.
Am I wrong, or is Phoenix Rising the team that loyal fans hated because they said something about the gay player on the team? Yeah. That feels like feels like you could have found another team to scrimmage against.
Yeah, different components.
Like Loyal had one
coach
rival.
is gone.
Yeah, I know. But Loyal had one rival. One.
Yeah.
And that's the one you bring in. Come on now.
Yeah, availability.
So
yeah, listen, they look really, really good in these edited Instagram clips. So maybe they'll be really good. Maybe they won't be so good.
They look really good at what? Scoring?
They look good
defense?
at scoring. They look good. They look like they've got a little.
Do you know what they're playing?
Like what structure? 4-3-3.
So 4 up front? No, 4 in the back.
4 in the back.
3-3.
3 mids and 3 forwards. And, they seem to be flying around a little bit. I think the tough thing is, they've built a roster that's never played together. They're playing for a coach who's never been a top-flight head coach before.
Ooh.
So, nobody really, until you do it, nobody knows.
Yeah.
And some of these players are coming from environments where for me, it's tough to know what exactly the exchange rate is, right? Like they've had... they have 3 Danish players on the squad. 2 of them were playing in Denmark. One of them was amongst the league leaders in goals scored in Denmark. So what does that mean in Major League Soccer? Nobody really knows the answer to that. So, those are the kind of questions that, what does that mean that team, 2 of these guys came from the same team in Denmark, which is, the Right to Dream Academy, FC Nordsjælland in Denmark. But what does that mean? What does a 5th place squad in the Danish Super League mean?
Right.
As it relates to Major League Soccer, and nobody can honestly answer that question. For as cliche as it is, it's actually the reason why you have to watch.
I remember
because nobody has any idea what this is going to be like.
I remember you, I believe, took me down to my first Cholos game, and part of the reason we were going was Paul Arriola was there.
Yeah.
And I remember,
my boy.
And I think he had just gotten there, maybe it was his second game there. And I remember you kind of having the same thing of we got to figure out what the exchange rate is, and he'll be able to tell us. And then I remember halfway through, you were I don't know if it's really telling anything. He's basically playing on concrete with grass painted on top of it. And you were but when he plays somewhere that has actual grass, we're going to be able to tell how dominant he is. And he's in the MLS now, right?
He is. He actually there was an opportunity for SDFC to grab him.
I heard you say this on Email Brown.
In the expansion draft.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, they decided to go in a different direction. But he's now with the Seattle Sounders.
He's probably older now, right?
He's 31, somewhere in that range. I mean, I've known Paul since he was 19.
Yeah.
Probably even younger when he was with Cholos. But I really thought he would have been a great fit for the club in terms of what he's capable of doing on the field and also what he's capable of doing as a South Bay kid.
Yeah.
But, they went in a different direction. So maybe that's an opportunity somewhere down the road.
It doesn't mean they can't get him later.
Can't get him. Yeah, right. And he'll be with Seattle, and Seattle's a win now kind of team. I know everybody says we're all trying to win.
Do they still get 60,000 people to a game?
They're still up there. They're still up there. Certainly one of the the standards of the league, if you will. Nobody. I know what everybody says. Hey, yeah, of course we're trying to win. The winning's the priority and all that sort of stuff. But, is it? So, I mean, really, is it possible that like 30 MLS teams all think that they're going to win? Maybe in a league where 18 of the 30 teams make the playoffs.
18?
18, nine per conference.
I mean, honestly, that's not different than the NBA at this point.
It's actually less.
Yeah, the NBA is 20, right? 20 out of 30.
20 out of 30. They did announce last week that they are going to be playing in. They won't be playing in the U.S. Open Cup, but they're going to be playing in the Leagues Cup, which is interesting because Leagues Cup is this. It's sort of a newer kind of manufactured competition between the Liga MX clubs and MLS clubs, select MLS clubs. And SDFC is one of those clubs that was selected to participate in this tournament. So you should expect at some point over the summer when the fixtures come out, the schedule comes out, you'll see, who knows which Liga MX clubs coming to Snapdragon Stadium.
It's not like the top 4 come. It's like
I feel like it's been under construction for the 3 years of its existence.
The Cup's happening. Are they playing at home, like home games?
Maybe.
Oh, so it's not like a centralized thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's all played in the U.S. It's all played in the U.S.
Why?
which is why the detractors of this competition, don't necessarily view it as a true testament of who's the better league because it's all played on U.S. soil.
Let's answer the Paul Arriola question. Liga MX, better product or worse product than MLS?
Yeah,
more or less popular, better or worse product? Or similar is a fine answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think when it comes to to competitions, like the CONCACAF Champions Cup, which if you don't follow the sport, there's all these overlapping tournaments. You play your league matches just against MLS clubs, and then you play. If you qualify, you play a continental competition called CONCACAF Champions Cup, which is
the funniest thing ever.
USA, Canada, Mexico, Panama, Caribbean clubs.
And it's always an affront to soccer. It is an embarrassment to itself. And
I love
loves
it. I love everything about it.
Me too.
It's gloriously imperfect.
Yes.
And hilarious at times. And then, they started this Leagues Cup because they saw an opportunity just to make a bunch of money.
Sure.
Right? The popularity of the
you get
Liga
it
MX
sponsored.
clubs,
It becomes like the Netflix, the Amazon Cup.
I don't think it's quite, it barely passes muster with FIFA, not to get lost in the weeds of this competition. But anyway, the point is they will be participating in this tournament. I don't know that they're going to be playing in San Diego, but I thought somebody said to me that they thought they were going to be hosting matches in San Diego. So I think that's probably going to happen.
It's good. I needed a sunburn.
I think, some of the clubs.
Did you say summer?
Yeah.
At Snapdragon?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah. They, it's a hard thing, right? Because you have Messi and all the older Barcelona players playing for Inter Miami. But on the other side of the border, you still have Club America, and you still have some of these, these clubs that really, really matter. So
is Zlatan still on Galaxy?
No, he's back in Europe. He's like an administrator now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Good for him.
Yeah. So anyway, it's like right around the corner, man.
I know. We'll do a deeper dive next week. I'll give you some time to do your research.
Yeah. Let me get the roster.
Do you? Yeah. Right. All right. So, if you were, when I was working at Yahoo, I did not have time to listen to your show in the middle of the day. So I didn't follow along all the time. I listened when there was big interviews, go listen to a podcast while I'm on the exercise bike or something. But if you were at iHeart right now, would you be in New Orleans doing Radio Row?
I don't think so. I think we...
Did you guys do it last year?
We did not. I sort of tapped out on the Super Bowl. I would have not said no to this year's Super Bowl. If I was approached by station management and they asked if I wanted to go to Super Bowl.
Because it's New Orleans?
Because it's New Orleans.
Yeah.
And I figured if you're going to go to a Super Bowl, you might as well go in a place like that.
Yeah.
But that list seemingly gets shorter and shorter every year. But I think a lot of these companies, John, they just have decided, like, there's no real payoff there. Radio Row sort of sucks. And it's just a bunch of dweebs running around pitching products and avocados and
this is why
things that nobody really gives a fuck about because you never really, you can never do the type of content that it used to be way back when everybody would make themselves available. And now, honestly, it kind of just becomes some big circle jerk for media, where media people are just interviewing media people like all day, and
because otherwise, as a listener, it becomes I listen to commercials, I come back, I get like 2 good questions, and then it's back into a commercial, right? You get 2 good questions, and then LaDainian Tomlinson wants to talk to you about Tostitos or whatever,
right? And that's and sometimes it is not the star quality of LaDainian Tomlinson. Most of the time, it is not that person at all.
Right, exactly. That's why I thought you did an interesting thing on Radio Row, which is like you didn't really care about getting the name. You cared about how interesting the conversation could be, right? And everyone else is like, oh, how big of a name can we get on? How big of a name can we get on? As if that drove ratings at all, as if that drove downloads at all, as if that guy wasn't doing or girl wasn't doing 50 other interviews that same day that are easily accessible to anyone else. I will remind you.
But that's like a huge ego stroke for producers, for hosts,
going to Radio
for
Row.
Station management, because then what happens is my immediate supervisor gets to go justify that cost by saying they had this person on, they had that person on.
Yeah.
So, it's not as interesting if you're having lesser known names on, but if you can pull Michael Irvin every once in a while, or if you can pull LaDainian Tomlinson, then you go, oh, you're not going to believe who we had on our sports station, right?
Yeah.
Then it becomes validating to the sports station, even though you and I both know 95% chance that conversation sucked, right? And it was probably torture for the listener, but it was about the ego stroke of being able to say, guess who we had on our little radio station here in San Diego? Boom, fill in the blank, Russell Wilson or whatever.
My favorite Radio Row interview that I think I've ever seen, and I might even be in the background of it, was you talking to Michael Irvin, who was talking to the sports science guy.
John Brankus?
Something like that. John something. Every once in a while, I'll go back and I'll watch it, like every few years, because I'm like, I remember that being great. And he's talking about the speed of sound versus the speed of light and how that affected. He would look at the ball as opposed to wait to hear the quarterback because he could see it faster than he could hear it, and that gave him a jump on everyone. And it's just very, very interesting. But most of them are dog shit.
Terrible.
But I will.
And you always have some PR person telling you, wrap it up. You're like, man, this guy just sat here for 4 minutes. And if you've ever listened to my show, I do longer interviews.
Yeah.
I like having a conversation, not just like pulling this one line from Patrick Mahomes.
They would start with the wrap it up after the first answer.
Yeah.
Every time. It drove me nuts.
It was bad.
I will tell you a funny story that encapsulates Radio Row in a lot of the ways that you were just talking about. So I was there with an LA radio station, right? And I was the engineer, but I was also helping to produce, wrangle, going to get people, hey, can we get on your schedule, come whatever. And I hated it. It was terrible, but I did it, and I was good at it. And at one point, I come back to the host at that time, and I'm like, hey, I got you Conor McGregor. This was 2013.
Wow.
And I was like, I got you Conor McGregor. And my host goes, who's Conor McGregor? And I was like, he's an MMA fighter. He's going to be a huge star. And he was like, MMA? He's like, is he in UFC? I'm like, yeah, he's in UFC. He's going to be a huge star. This was right before he won any belts. Maybe he had one belt and he hadn't had the second yet. He wasn't a huge star yet. But I could see that he was going to be because he had the personality and the skill and everything. And I'm like, trust me, you're going to want to talk to this guy. He's going to say something that's going to go viral because that's what he does. And he's going to be a big deal. And people are going to remember they heard him on your show. And he's like, you gotta sell me harder before I'm willing to say yes to this. So I pull up an interview that Conor McGregor had given a couple months before, and I hand it to my host, and he watches it, and he hands me back the phone. He goes, absolutely fucking not. I don't understand a word he's saying.
Accent.
And he just said, I don't understand a word he's saying. And he's like, I don't want to be caught in that position where he says something, and I'm just like, I have no idea what you said. And then he came to me 6 months later, a year later, Conor McGregor's exploding, and he goes, you were right. We should have had him on. And I'm like, no, I was wrong. If you can't understand what the guy is saying because of his accent, we should not have him on. He's like, but it would have looked so good. Right. I'm like, that's not the fucking point, man.
Yeah, I mean, that becomes what it is. You sort of become this influencer mentality where you think everything's about posting the picture to the Instagram reel or what have you. So, again, and a lot of this stuff, a lot of these radio stations can't go there unless they sell it. It's got to be a sales point.
I remember that the last time you guys went at 1090, was like, we're not going unless someone pays for it.
Right, and it's a couple grand because the NFL definitely milks you. You know, like they insist that you got to stay in team hotels, and you have to stay in team hotels for X amount of nights.
Yeah,
right? Like
it's
the
a
NFL,
minimum 3.
There's
think.
like a minimum, and then the price gets jacked up because you have to stay on a Friday. Like Friday's almost mandatory for some of these places.
Yeah,
and then you gotta pay. Like you gotta pay for what's called an ISDN line. You got to pay for an actual line to sit on Radio Row so that you actually are capable of broadcasting back. Somebody's got to be able to engineer all this stuff.
Yep.
I mean, we gave up on per diem years ago just because it was a fight that we couldn't win.
Oh.
But we still wanted to go occasionally.
Yeah.
So, if you cannot justify the cost in modern media with all the problems that some of these radio companies are having, then you're probably not going to go. And that's why, but it's not even like smaller places that aren't going anymore. Like Colin Cowherd. Now, maybe he's going this year because it's a Fox Super Bowl, I think. Do I have that right?
Which one's Tom Brady on?
Fox, right?
Then, yeah, because Brady was talking last week about how he was or 2 weeks ago about how he was broadcasting the Super Bowl.
Okay, so I don't know this because I've tapped out, but maybe if it's a Fox entity. I remember Jim Rome telling me this a million years ago that when it's a CBS Super Bowl, they really roll out the red carpet for CBS.
Yeah.
So and he was at the time part of the the whole CBS family. He was doing stuff with the pregame show. So he had some opportunities here that other broadcasters didn't have. But even like the big shows now have just decided, I don't know, it kind of sucks. Like there's no payoff here. Like there's just less and less payoff.
Well, and everyone's not going anymore. Like Dan Patrick doesn't go.
Right.
He goes to the city, but he gets his own
and
thing.
Colin hasn't gone in
Dan
years.
Lebitard started, even when he was in Miami, Dan Lebitard's like, we'll rent a place down the street. I don't want to deal with all that bullshit.
I did an interview last year with the Sports Business Journal, a guy named Daniel Kaplan.
I know
he was
Daniel
shocked. He could not believe that. I was like, I don't give a fuck if I ever go. Like it is just not what it used to be. And at some point, could you have a moment? Could you have a couple of moments? Marty always used to say it was incredibly beneficial for her to be there because it's how she would get her contacts.
She would make tons of connections.
So, guys that maybe we couldn't even get this week, but we can get them next football season, right?
Yeah.
Like that stuff mattered. And I always understood that. Then we got to the point I was like, well, why don't we just send her? Just let her sit there and like talk to different people and such. But, then even that became a bit more chaotic. So I was fine. I'm fine. I could unpredictably end up back in network radio tomorrow, and I still think I'd say exactly the same thing. Every once in a while, a destination will feel attractive to you for personal reasons, but for the most part, if I'm not around a bunch of Kansas City, Philadelphia fans this week, I'm pretty good. I'm okay with that.
That's fair. I think the last time I was there was the Miami Super Bowl, which I think was Patriots Seahawks. I think it was Patriots Seahawks. And even like the Seahawks fans were annoying, man. That was like the second year that they allowed like fans to come through Radio Row. Used to be like fans couldn't get in there, right?
Right, yeah.
And then they were like fans are allowed in certain areas.
Right.
And they would like show up and start yelling at people who were on the radio. And I'm like, this is disruptive. This is terrible.
That's that's the other change too, is a lot of those, bigger networks also would go and put themselves in places where the public access was very limited.
They built stages.
They would go build stages. I remember DirecTV building like an entire compound for all the people that were on some DirecTV channel. So.
Speaking of Stephen A. Smith, our future president, one of the radio rows I went to, Sirius XM had put a stage, a literal, like you're seeing a band stage, and then put their table on top of the stage, assuming that they would have like 100 people just standing in front of the stage watching someone do their show. And Stephen A. Smith was doing his show at the Sirius XM stage, because I think he's got a Sirius show or did have a Sirius show. And I went and I stood there, and I was the only person listening to Stephen A. Smith in like an area that was meant for hundreds. And I watched him for about 2-3 minutes, and he saw me and he locked eyes with me and he started doing the show for me because I was the only person paying attention. And like, I did it for like 3 minutes, and I was like, this is stupid. He started yelling like at me. He's like, you don't understand. This is the point. And he's like, rigs are on the line. Legacies are on the line. And I was just like, this is terrible. And I just like wandered off. And then every so often I'd like walk past it and I'd look over and someone would be doing their show on a stage and no one was watching. And
Yeah, those guys that have those late night shows, that's always hilarious to be around it.
Yeah.
You know, our show is a noon to 3 show, so we would get off the air at 6 o'clock East Coast time. And, you know, just to see some of those shows and the shenanigans that go on. You know what the other like absolutely worst thing is? The media night thing. Oh, man. They will credential literally anybody for that.
They will.
And you allow in every goofball on planet Earth to go in there and get in the way of the actual respected journalist, John. So, you know, those people would always make a mockery of the whole event, but that's what they liked.
I like the media party.
Yeah, I usually skipped it.
It was just fun because it was
You know what the problem with the media party is?
Too many
Media.
people like me.
Yeah.
No, it's I would always have like a group of people that I knew that I could kind of hang out with.
Free drinks.
Yeah, last time I was hanging with some of my coworkers, I bumped into John Browner and Alex Padilla, and I was hanging out with them. Free drinks. The drinks were good. It was in Miami, so there was like this giant pot of like, not jambalaya, but something like that. Paella, giant pot of like paella. That was really good. They had people rolling cigars and handing them to you, lighting them, and I was like, this is nice. This is fun.
Cafecitos.
Oh, the cafecitos everywhere. The cafecitos. We haven't talked about the Padres at all. We probably should. We're 55 minutes into this almost.
FanFest, did you go?
No, absolutely not. I got better things to do with my time. Plus, I woke up at, 7:30 that morning. It was Saturday. And I immediately saw I follow this account on Blue Sky called Padres Twitter bot. And there's a selected number of accounts on Twitter that they are just like, these people are Padres Twitter. When they tweet something, it gets like replicated on Blue Sky. So I can watch what they're doing, but I don't have to be on Twitter, right? Our Rich Roberts is one of them, and Ben Higgins is one of them. And so I wake up and I see a thing from the Padres Twitter bot on Blue Sky, Ben Higgins at like 7 a.m, and he's like, there's already a line around the block of people waiting to get in to Padres Fan Fest. And I was like, why would I want to do that? Like, it's going to be depressing. I'm not going to learn anything.
Was it depressing, though?
I heard the vibes weren't great.
Seemed like a lot of people went. No, I was in Sonoma, so I'm
sure
nowhere
they did.
near it.
Like, there's a lot of people who are just like, yeah, Padres. Like, me and Craig used to get this at Padres Hot Tub. People were just like, your job should be to hype up the fans and root for the team. And it's like, no, we're acting as analysts here. Our job is to analyze. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of people that just, everything Padres is positive. Go Padres, and it doesn't need to be anything more than that. And I'm sure a lot of those people were at Padres Fan Fest.
And I would think Fan Fest is probably an event that lends itself to that mindset.
It's like spring training.
It's Fan Fest.
Yeah.
You are there as a fan to try to get an autograph, sneak a peek, take a pic,
right?
Do that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Hit the garage sale or whatever else it is that's going on there. So if there's any day on the calendar year where it's okay to just be of that mindset,
that's
that
probably
would be it.
That's probably
I think showing up at Fan Fest in like a pretty dour mood is probably maybe just stay home. Maybe that's not the day for you.
My experience with Fan Fest was at the end of the day. I pulled up Marty Time TV. Is that still Marty Caswell's YouTube?
Yeah, she got in there with a credential.
And I was watching. They did credentials, and I was watching the interview with Fernando Tatis, the media availability of Fernando Tatis with Manny Machado, because you had talked so much with the Intelligence guys. I want to hear what Manny's going to say.
Yeah. I had a 4-step plan for how to get to Manny. I would have started with Manny on Ha-Sung Kim, right? Maybe his best friend on the club.
Yep.
Oh man, can you believe it? Ha-Sung Kim, he's somewhere else. You learned Korean.
He sounded pretty bummed.
And then I would have to a lesser extent I would have hit him with Profar, right? Because who's going to argue with Profar making $42 million someplace else?
They hit Tatis with that.
And then I would have and then my third thing, if this was just me one-on-one with Manny, my third step would have been, hey, Roki Sasaki was at your house. Do you feel like you personally are you personally offended that he ended up signing with the LA Dodgers after this man came to your house to eat sushi?
Did you watch the media availability for him?
No. So I read some.
Someone asked him that. Yeah. Someone was because
I have it right here in front of me.
Because what Manny said,
he said, I think he had his mind set already on where he was going. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and someone followed that up with, and I don't think it was Marty, although Marty was definitely asking the best questions. Someone followed that up with, did you get that feeling at the dinner at your house, or is this just a thing that you've always felt? And he was like, I don't think he did or said anything specifically that tipped me off to it. It's just a hunch. And that told me that him and everyone else in baseball is just looking at this going, they never had a chance.
Now, maybe Manny's just, maybe he's just passing the blame along. Maybe Manny's a terrible host.
Could be.
Maybe Manny ordered from the wrong restaurant.
He may open the door wearing a Trump shirt.
Right.
Whatever he wore at spring training a couple years ago.
Right. His Let's Go Brandon shirt, maybe.
His Let's Go Brandon shirt.
Yeah, maybe all of this factored in, John. I don't know. I wasn't there. But that would have been my third line of questioning there. Like, does he feel personally responsible for not being able to land the big free agent? And then I would have hit him with the Shield stuff on the way out.
My favorite thing that you said.
Because I feel like by then he probably would have been very open and honest and willing to just get out.
My favorite thing that you said on Gwintelligence, your second appearance recently, was that some media member should walk around with a picture of Shield and a picture of John Seidler and go, who's this and who's this to every player and see if they could identify them.
I'm guessing 95% success on Shield and 0% on John Seidler, who, by the way, might be confirmed by the time people listen to this podcast.
Okay, so not to make this about the Dallas Mavericks, but what the Dallas Mavericks did in trading away Luka Doncic showed that they don't give a shit about their fan base at all. And Nico Harrison believes that Anthony Davis is better than Luka Doncic, and he's wrong, but he's like, hey, as long as we win games, we think everything else is fine. And it's like, A, you're probably not going to win the games, and B, you're not going to be fine because you have imploded your fan base because you have ruined the trust of your fan base. No one will ever trust this owner again. No one will ever trust this GM again. It's going to take a generation for a lot of Mavericks fans to go back to the team. And John Seidler, who is about to be the control person of the Padres, had the easiest win you could have possibly asked for right in front of him. Show up at FanFest. Show your face. Show up to FanFest wearing an old Padres hat. And be like, I've worn this thing every day for 8 years. And I love the Padres. And I watch every game. And I don't get down here quite as much as I want to. But I'm always paying attention. And look, I'm never going to let them trade Tatis. That's my guy. My kids love him. They wear his jersey. Easiest fucking win in the world. You don't even have to take fucking questions. You just show up. And look, whether or not what Shield says is true, that, she's basically been strong-armed out and she was never going to be a part of this, they were definitely going to let John Seidler do that if he said he wanted to do it. Where is he? Why didn't he do and what that told me is he does not give any shits about the fans at all.
Well, I mean, is it possible that because he hasn't been confirmed, he hasn't been voted in? I mean, he's going to get voted in by every conversation I've heard, but he's got to get voted in first.
Not to make this as a positive comparison, but Jeffrey Morad made plenty of appearances at FanFest before ever not being voted in.
But he was still. I think he was still voted in as the chairperson.
Ownership.
It's the ownership thing that completely collapsed on him at the last second. I think I might have that wrong, but I think I remember going down that way because Jeffrey Morad was doing plenty of talking around San Diego.
Or you have him show up and go, hey, look, we're hoping everything goes the way we want it to. If not, we really believe in Eric Katsenda to manage this thing until we get a plan in place that everyone's happy with. It's so easy. If you are the one that shows up.
Or I got an idea, put him on the video board. If you don't trust him in front of people, put him on a video board. Hey, Padre fans, we look forward to seeing you here in 2025. Go Pods.
Yeah.
But again, maybe there's some legal reason, right? I mean, this still is like an active lawsuit or multiple active lawsuits. So maybe there's some reason why that doesn't happen. I'm not sure.
He's a minority owner. They didn't let him talk. Ron Fowler gets to talk. Let him talk. It would have cured so much. And instead, what we got out of it is...
Well, yes and no. I mean, Eric Katsenda spoke last year at spring training, and I don't know that inspired anybody. I don't know that anybody felt inspired the one time that Eric Katsenda spoke to our local media.
The only thing that ever gets brought up with John Seidler is, are we sure he was there?
Right.
Well, I've never seen him. There's no
Right.
pictures of him.
Not many people know who he is.
You think they wouldn't have gotten a picture of him standing on the field, standing next to Eric Katsena, and then the UT could have used it every time they write about John Seidler? Like, it's a 87-mile-an-hour fastball down the middle, and they just decided no? Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's embarrassing, but it shows a lack of want to as far as appeasing an angry fan base. And like AJ Preller can stand there and be like, hey, we got a lot of moves we still got to make. But that doesn't appease anyone because then everyone's like, oh, that means he's going to trade Cease and he's going to trade King and he's going to trade Arise. And why are we giving up on them? And why are we trading them? Hey, Caesar's here. And it's just such an easy win. And I've yet to see or hear any explanation as to why it wasn't taken.
Yeah, and I'm playing devil's advocate more than I am trying to justify him not being there. But I don't know that would have made everybody feel that much better about where things currently stand.
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean,
it's okay.
Maybe, though. Maybe he would have come out and he would have shown a level of charisma that we haven't seen in a Padre owner since Ray Kroc. Could have happened.
For sure.
I guess that'll happen sometime at a later date. And
you're saying Peter didn't have charisma?
He did. I mean, I don't. Everybody knows how I felt about Peter.
I love Peter.
Yeah, but maybe John will prove himself to be somehow an even more charismatic Seidler brother. Who knows?
I actually think they should build a statue for Peter Seidler somewhere at Petco Park, maybe right next to the Jerry Coleman statue, wherever that is. And in my mind, what it should be is I think the picture that Marty took of him, where he's got his arms out.
Yeah,
like,
right
hey!
after the soda train.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
hey, what are you...
Yeah.
What?
Or maybe John doesn't want to sit there and answer a bunch of questions about, hey, like, when are you guys selling a team?
You don't have to take questions. Make a statement. Walk off.
Yeah, you could have. Could have had a presence.
You even say, hey, I would love to take questions. Right now there's a legal battle. I've been told not to. I'm very sorry, but I wanted you guys to know that I'm here. I'm part of the team. You know, if I'm lucky enough to be voted in as the control person, I will be up to date on the day-to-day operations of the team.
That's a slam dunk. That's happening.
It's a slam dunk.
That's all right. I'm sure Kevin Acey will get the exclusive.
The Michael King thing, I mean, a small bit of applause. Smart.
Got it done.
It's smart. It's
done.
It's the same number. It got
I think both sides felt very good about it.
Got them under the tax. Got him his money.
I don't think it did get him under the tax.
No?
I still think they're over the tax. One thing that I haven't heard anybody explain is over the tax or not, they're going to get some insurance money back on Joe Musgrove. I don't know exactly what that number is. It's not going to be the full 20, but I think you're going to get somewhere between $7 and $10 million back for Musgrove. What does that have to do with anything salary related, if at all?
We're assuming he doesn't pitch at all this season.
I'm assuming he's not going to pitch at all this year. He had Tommy John surgery in October.
Yeah,
I'm
during the
guessing he's not
playoffs.
gonna
Yeah,
pitch
it's
this year,
probably.
yeah. Because you're going to get insurance money back. And again, it seems to be a little ambiguous as to what the number is, but best estimates I've heard were somewhere between like 7, 8 to 10 in that range, something like that.
Who knows?
You just going to spend that money, or is that money just going in somebody's pocket?
They got to do something to your point. To your point, to my point, to everyone's point. They're not making any moves with the roster. They're not making any moves on the business side to make money off a TV deal or anything like that. And they're not making any moves to appease the fan base as far as the mysterious nature of John Seidler. So at this point, it feels like they're dead in the water. Like, is AJ Preller job hunting? Is that what's happening? Like, I'm very, very curious. But
he spoke over the weekend, didn't he?
He did.
I know he never says anything interesting, but
all he said was they have some moves left they need to make. And I think he even was like, yeah,
well, that's good.
We need an outfielder, a couple arms.
DH.
But I don't know, make a move. Like the joke has been said a million times, but at this point it's more fact than fiction, which is like the Padres have been shut out not just for 24 innings, but then for 6 months after, right? So it's like, do something, anything. The fan base is hungry for it, and I've heard people say like, hey, Shield Seidler has done a lot. to try and get the fans on her side. We would love if John Seidler would do anything to get the fans on his side, because what that probably is going to amount to is they sign someone, or they trade for someone, or they make the team better in some way, and everyone's going to be like, finally, they did something. But right now, it's a whole lot of nothing.
It is a whole lot of nothing. Then again, even our brief history of weekly conversations, sometimes by the time we even post this,
Yeah, they've
something has
done
happened.
something. I'm not connected to the internet, so it's entirely possible.
I'm
something has
scrolling.
happened.
I don't see much.
One thing we never got into, and we don't need to because we're already at an hour 10. But I want to throw this out there. You had a rough couple days of travel trying to get back to San Diego, and a thing that I noticed this morning as you were telling the story about your rough travel and wearing the same clothes 2 days in a row because you only packed so much and you ended up having to spend an extra day and all that is, and I'm a man with a beard, so I know this is not a criticism. You have one hair on your chin that's much longer than the rest of the hairs on your chin, which means you had a little bit of a beard that you trimmed either last night or this morning.
This morning.
Darren, I've never seen you with anything more than some polite stubble, maybe a little bit of hair on the chin and around the goatee like you got right now. If the Padres do, can we attach this? I want to put a bet that makes you grow a beard. Leah might hate me for this.
Yeah, she will. Here's the problem. My facial hair grows in odd directions. I have like cowlicks. So
I got that down here on the neck.
I have to keep it to a certain length. So I do have a beard trimmer.
Padres win the
which
NL
I
West.
implemented this morning.
Can you grow a big long beard?
Probably not. But sure.
Just promise it, sure.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't realize I missed a spot.
There was just one. I catch it when you're sideways. I catch it. There's just one long. It happens to me every time I trim. There's always one hair that you miss.
Yeah, but
Gotta get it with a
getting a
scissor.
little older sometimes. You see like longer hairs coming out of places that it's a lot of maintenance.
Those gray hairs, they grow in weird directions.
And it's like, it's coming out of your ear, and it's on the part of your ear, the lobe part of it, and there's just a lot going on, dude. It's a lot of maintenance.
I had a friend once tell me he's like, I realized I was old when at the end of my haircut, the guy started trimming the hairs on my ear.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God.
I've had my barber. Shout out to Ricky at Faded Craft in Imperial Beach. He started asking about my eyebrows.
Oh no!
Yeah, so nobody wants to look like Andy Rooney was that dude from 60 Minutes.
After I trimmed the beard, I just trimmed the eyebrows.
Yeah, I've become a little more aware of that, but you could definitely go wrong there.
Oh, I've done it.
Go wrong there.
I fucked up the eyebrows before.
Yeah, when's the last time you put an actual razor on your face?
I mean, I trim the neck all the time, but that's not the face.
It's been many, many months.
So last year I had like a rash that actually like grew under my beard, and I couldn't get to it. I couldn't treat it until I shaved it all off. So I shaved it all off, and I was trying to treat it, and it wasn't really working. I went to the doctor, and he was like, yeah, they don't really tell you about this, but when you have a beard, like food can get caught in it, and then the food can cause like an infection, and then so I had to like switch to like the Head and Shoulders stuff and put it in my beard and like leave it there for a while. And,
right. Yeah. I mean, there's definitely dandruff.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why, I mean, and my doctor told me, he's like, you should always be like, for your beard, he's like, use like dandruff control, Head and Shoulders. He's like, that shit has medicine in it that keeps it from getting infected, dried out, whatever. He's like, you should do that. It's a great way to end a podcast.
Yeah. And plus it was like 3-4 days of wine tasting up in Sonoma. So I had to like actually cut out some of the food and beverage that was
the wine stained little hairs around the mouth.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, if you licked your lips, you could kind of taste some of it there, still stuck into the
clumped together.
Yeah, into the hairs on the lip. Yeah, good times.
Good times.